Welcome to the Special Needs Kids Are People Too podcast with Amy Bodkin, EDS. Amy is an autistic adult who also happens to be a school psychologist turned special needs consultant and public speaker. She's also a homeschooling mom to 2 autistic kiddos, a yoga instructor, a card-carrying Trekkie, and an all-around fun person. And last but not least, Amy is an advocate for seeing every child as a person, not a diagnosis. Because a special needs kid is just like any other child, just more so. Here's Amy Bodkin.
Hi, I'm Amy Bodkin, coming to you from the blanket fort in my office, and welcome to Special Needs Kids Are People Too. Today, I wanted to talk with you guys for a little bit about ABA. ABA has come under fire by autistic adults recently for some very good reasons. However, to say that, ABA is the scourge of the earth and we must get rid of it, and if we get rid of it, everything will be hunky-dory is not really very nuanced of an explanation. So let me start by explaining some of the problems that autistic adults are pointing out about ABA. And then let me explain what the real underlying issue is. So the Judge Rotenberg Center is one place that offers ABA, and they have devised an electric shock treatment for use on children. This shock device delivers a 90 milliamp shock. Now, for reference, a police taser gives a 2.1 milliamp shock. This is a huge difference. OSHA actually says that a 90 milliamp shock can kill you. And this device was approved by the FDA. They then later tried to ban it, but the United States Congress, well, not Congress, but the court systems said that it was not within their jurisdiction to ban it, and so now it is once again legal again. And no one has banned it yet, whoever has it in their jurisdiction. The other issue is that all of the certification groups, the professional organizations for ABA, all of them except the Judge Rotenberg Center, even though when they come to conferences, they speak specifically about shocking children and using that as a treatment to stop self-injurious behavior. There are other options, and we most certainly don't shock children, and we most certainly especially do not try to accidentally kill children. That's not appropriate. Ever. So that's one of the big problems with ABA. It's not the only problem. Another problem is sometimes, tabletop work was very popular. I think it's becoming less popular now. But forcing a child to sit for long periods of time at a table and not letting them leave unless they do what you want them to, that's mean and, quite honestly, kind of abusive. It's really using our power as adults to force a child to do something that maybe they don't want to do. Maybe it's highly uncomfortable for them. You don't know what's going on inside their body. So that's also not okay. Another problem that we've seen with ABA in recent times is that a lot of times people say, oh, well, you need to learn social skills. Here's how you do social skills. And they teach what they see as appropriate social skills. Well, first of all, what does the child want to work on? That's what we need to be working on. Not what will benefit, the insurance company or the adults in that child's life. I mean, we want to give parents skills. That's, helpful. But ultimately, a child should be in charge of being the person they want to be. We can't say who you want to be is not okay. You have to be the person that we want you to be. Everybody's a person, And they get to make their own calls about what kind of a person they're going to be. And those are some of the problems with ABA, but here's the newsflash. Those kinds of issues don't extend only to ABA, with exception of maybe shocking children. I'm not entirely certain that I can think of another instance where it's okay to shock children with a 90 milliamp shock. But all of the other issues, those are things that we do in our homes as parents. Those are things that we do in speech therapy or in occupational therapy or in physical therapy or in schools. And it comes down to a lack of respect for personhood. And it's not that we mean to disrespect personhood. It's just that a lot of times we're doing what we saw growing up. And maybe people didn't respect our personhood growing up. And maybe they didn't respect our personhood because somebody else didn't respect their personhood. These are big ideas to think through. They're philosophical underpinnings that impact everything that we do. And one of the reasons this has become such a problem as of late is that we live in a society that loves to be able to quantify. We love to use science to solve as many problems as we possibly can. And there's nothing wrong with that. Science can be very useful. But we have to remember that it only answers the questions that we ask. And if we don't ask the right questions, it can mislead us. And it can't give us all the answers either. Children cannot be quantified. A child as a person is not something to be quantified. You cannot sum up any one person with a list of numbers or algorithms. People are unique. Beautiful, unique works of art. You can't quantify art either. And because of that, I think it explains why there has been more of a draw recently in the homeschool world towards Charlotte Mason's philosophy. I think in a lot of ways we're kind of recognizing that yes, there are some limitations to what science can tell us. Behavior science, it's not wrong. We can use those techniques that we've discovered to, manipulate and change behavior. But that doesn't necessarily make it right. And Charlotte Mason's educational philosophy, Charlotte Mason, for those of you who don't know, was an educational philosopher born in the late 1800s in England. And she wrote a philosophy of education. It included 20 principles. The first principle is children are born persons. I have looked the world over and I have yet to find another educational philosophy that starts with the idea that children are persons. And that's why it's the philosophy that I love the most and that I use in my practice with families. Even if they're not using a Charlotte Mason approach to homeschooling, I'm still approaching it from a Charlotte Mason approach because my goal is that each child is seen as a person and not as a quantified number of skills or abilities or development. I use numbers, I use science, but I'm tempering that with the principle that children are born persons and trying to remember, first and foremost, that before me is not just a number. Before me is a child, a person, who is unique and deserves the opportunity to be the best version of themselves that they can be, that they want to be, that they get to have choices. Charlotte Mason's educational philosophy was greatly influenced by the time in which she was living. Her final book, summarizing all of her philosophy to that point, was written shortly after World War I. And in her book, she's hoping that they never have anything like that happen again. But we unfortunately know that we did. World War II came shortly thereafter. But what she has to say about World War I and what she saw as the problems is really the insightful part, I think. She talked about how the German education system had gone through a change recently at that time, shortly before World War I. They were taking the educational philosophies of English philosophers and applying them, but they had stripped out all morality, and they had tried to go with purely a scientific approach to create the best citizen, and not really invest in the individual moral character. And so, basically, Germany ended up not respecting the individuality and the personhood of countries, and decided if they weren't a good enough country, then they could just take them over, and that was perfectly okay. And we don't really see a huge change in the educational system prior to World War II. And at that point in time, it became okay to say, well, I don't respect your individuality as a person, and you're the wrong kind of person, and we can just dispose of you. Charlotte Mason saw what was going on educationally, and it greatly influenced the principles that she developed to guide her educational system. And I think it's why it's becoming popular again today, because I think that we too have also been going through a time where we're trying to quantify children to follow the science of education and forget about the fact that children are people and that they have needs to discuss big ideas and to talk through, what's right, why is it right, those kinds of things. We can discuss those kinds of topics using literature, mythology. We don't have to do it necessarily in a religious context, but you do need to include the historical wisdom of the world. To say, oh, we've grown beyond that. We don't need that anymore. It doesn't have value. That's a very arrogant perspective to take. A lot of times there's a lot of great wisdom hidden in ancient stories, and perhaps it's not that they weren't so brilliant. Perhaps it's that we haven't recognized the brilliance that they offer. And now, a word from our sponsors. Hi guys, it's Amy from amybodkin.com. You may have heard that we have started a new series called Profiles in Personhood, and I am super excited about it. I'm going to be interviewing children and adults who have different types of disabilities, traumas, learning differences, developmental differences, all kinds of things, so that we can talk about who they are, what they love, how they see themselves, all of those kinds of interesting questions that help us get to know the person behind the diagnosis. If you'd like to participate in one of these shows, feel free to submit your information on my website to amybodkin.com/profiles-personhood. So, Charlotte Mason's philosophy, there's 20 different principles, and the first one starts out, like I said earlier, with children are born persons. And I feel like this is super important because it changes everything else that comes afterwards. The next principle is they are not born either good or bad, but with possibilities for good and for evil. To me, that just says children have potential. And children always have potential. You cannot say, well, this child will only achieve this in their life. So many times, doctors and professionals have been proven wrong when they try to make those kinds of predictions. Principle 3 is the principles of authority on the one hand and of obedience on the other are natural, necessary, and fundamental. And that's true. You can't go out and just do whatever you want. There's certain things that are not allowed. But 4, these principles are limited by the respect due to the personality of children, which must not be encroached upon, whether by the direct use of fear or love, suggestion or influence, or by undue play upon any one natural desire. This principle is so critical. How many times do we try to scare kids into doing things we want them to do? How many times do we try to use their love for us to get them to do something we think they should do? How often do we bribe our children? I mean, I will definitely say that I do on occasion say, okay, well, if you want to work for this, that's fine. But there is a distinct difference between saying, hey, all right, if you do the work, then you definitely have done the work to earn blank, which is totally different, honestly, than saying, if you do this, I'll give you a cookie. That's not earning. That's total bribery. And how many times do we try to influence their opinions, their actions, by suggestion or influence? Trying to guide the way that their minds are thinking instead of giving them the option to come to that on their own. Principle 5, therefore, we are limited to 3 educational instruments: the atmosphere of environment, the discipline of habit, and the presentation of living ideas. The PNEU motto is, education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And really, that is what we have. When you create, and your atmosphere, it's not your home, like how your house is decorated or whatever. I mean, everything in a child's atmosphere definitely contributes to how they grow up. But it's more about the relationships. When we have positive relationships with our kids, we create an atmosphere where they feel completely accepted. And they know that they are individual people and have the right to learn and grow and choose for themselves. Basically, you're saying, I like you just the way you are, no matter what. And that's the thing about parenting. You can't attach strings to how much you'll love your child. And that's really what Principle 4 was all about. You can't say, well, I'll only love you if you believe everything just like I do. Or I'll only love you if you, get married and have children. Or, I'll only love you if you're not gay. We have to love our children regardless of whatever their life choices are. That is what parenting is all about. It's not even, yes, we're raising the next generation, but what it's really about is what it teaches us. It teaches us how to love and appreciate and accept people just because they're our children, not because of anything they do. And that can be difficult sometimes, because we can become quite dedicated to our own feelings and our own beliefs and what we like to do. And to recognize that our child is a separate person who has different likes and dislikes from us, that can be very hard. It's a little bit easier when it's something simple like, I just don't like pecan pie. So those are the first 5 principles. And education being a discipline, that just means that we operate based on habits. We can make good habits that help us, and we can make bad habits that don't help us. And kind of being mindful of those habits and saying, oh, how is this working for me? Is this helping me? Oh, this isn't working for me. We should make an adjustment. That's really what it means by discipline. And by a life, we are always learning. It's a lifelong goal. So that's pretty much the first 5 principles of her education, and she goes on for 6, 7, and 8 to explain what atmosphere, discipline, and a life mean. And then she goes into a totally different section. I divide the first 8 principles as kind of being the physicality or the body. And then the next part is really more what I call the mind, and that's principles 9 through probably about, I would guess, 15. And they tend to govern more how we educate. And mostly what she's talking about in 9 through 14, 15 is that we need to present our kids with ideas. It's not that we need to teach them to memorize anything. I mean, you can program a computer to remember things. The important part is to present them with ideas, and ideas worthy of discussion. And a lot of those come down to, moral philosophical type ideas, Is this the right way to treat children? And that comes back to the ABA stuff we were talking about earlier. And that's really, I think, what the issue is with ABA. It's not the science. The science has been proven true. It's the ethics. And what autistic adults are saying is that your governing bodies as a field is not living up to the ethics that you need as a field. And if they're not willing to address it, then we're going to. Somebody has to address that. That's the way it is. You cannot hurt children and nobody do something about that. What I'd love to see is the ABA field stand up and say, hey, this isn't okay. This has to be fixed. And some are. And there are some really good people out there. And there are really good people out there helping to support families and children. Because, you know what, like it or not, ABA is one of the few supports that families have that's covered by insurance. And to say it's always abusive and you should never ever do it, but not offering families other supports in its place, that's also pretty bad. Because a lot of families do need supports. We've got families where they're single parents. They don't have any family near them. They don't have any child care. They can't afford child care. And in a lot of times, ABA serves as that child care. And if you have a good ABA therapist who, really respects your child's personhood and somehow finds a way to manage that with insurance companies, and that's what keeps you sane. That's what, gives you time to be able to go to work and make money to support your family or to just have a few minutes to yourself. Then I can't come down hard on that. It's a balance. We've got to respect the individuality of children, but we also have to respect the individuality and needs of parents as well. So, regardless of what therapy you're doing, one of the things that I always tell people is get to know that therapist. Go back with that child every single time they go to therapy. If they don't want you back there, I would consider that to be a concern. If they'll let you get to know them and develop a trusting relationship, and you feel like you can really trust them to not hurt your child, then that may be a good support for you. And it's just something you've always got to be careful of. And it doesn't matter if it's therapy or not. I used to not send my kids to any kind of children's program that I couldn't go back with them. Because they couldn't talk. They couldn't tell me. They couldn't communicate. They had no language whatsoever. It wasn't a matter of just not speaking. It was a matter of having no language to communicate with at all. And they couldn't tell me if someone was hurting them. And that's really where a lot of the issues come down to with ABA specifically and in therapy and children's programming more generally. Children are vulnerable. And it is up to us as adults to protect them. And whether, you're a parent doing that by screening every single person that works with your child and being very diligent in how you do that, or maybe you're an autistic adult who says, hey, these ethical issues need to be fixed and they need to be fixed now. We should not be shocking children with 90 milliamps ever, especially not in 2021. We should be past that. And that's not okay. So we swing on this pendulum between faith and reason. At least that's what philosophy discusses a lot. And when we swing too far to reason, we tend to try to quantify, to use the science, to view children as a number, as research. And when we swing too far to faith, then we throw out all the research and we just do whatever sounds good to us at the time. Swinging too far to reason has taken us to the Holocaust. Swinging too far to faith has taken us to the Crusades. Either way, it leads us to a bad end. As human beings, we need balance. Not too hot, not too cold, not too hard, not too soft. And we need both reason and faith to be in balance, to serve as the checks and balances for us. And at certain times in life, we have swung harder to one than the other. The Enlightenment was fairly well balanced, but it was definitely on our way to swinging hard to reason. And the Transcendentalist time period in America, which matches up with the Romantic period in Europe at the time, swung a little more to faith, but still a bit more in that balance. And Charlotte Mason her ideas came out of a lot of that Romanticism, and her ideas actually were influenced by a lot of British philosophers who came before her. And she was also influenced by Bronson Alcott, who was the father of Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women. He was an educator in America during the Transcendentalist time period. He was a Transcendentalist, and he went to England to speak with many of the people that Charlotte Mason spoke about or wrote about in her books that influenced her. She was the same age as Louisa May Alcott. So, finding balance, recognizing we're swinging too far to science sometimes and saying, hey, we got to bring that personhood back into perspective. And I think that's a lot of why ABA is getting a lot of heat right now. And I think it's also a lot of why Charlotte Mason has become much more popular in homeschool circles in recent years. So, thanks for being with me and letting me share with you what I love about Charlotte Mason, and also some of these very serious problems that we need to address, not just with ABA, but in how we treat children in general. Thanks.
We hope you had fun listening to today's episode and gained some new insights into the wonderful variety of people in our world. You can find out more about Amy's advocacy work at amybodkin.com. And remember, special needs kids are people too.